Before we start UVing the low poly, I'm going to clean up my scene a little bit. There's this group 1 here for me. If I open it with shift left click on this plus, it'll open up everything underneath it. And these are just old like merges and moves and parents and whatnot. We don't need this anymore, so highlight the parent, hit delete. Same thing with this, there's really nothing there. It's not anything, so we can just delete it. Same with that. And here's my low poly. And here's my high poly. If I go into side view, spacebar in this window, and then my side camera is here. Your side camera might be somewhere else, but mine is in this window. So hover over here, press spacebar. If we zoom in, I can see that my low poly isn't the greatest in shape with the high poly. So when we go to bake, this would actually turn out black because there's nothing that it's going to be looking at, and it'll be kind of gross. So I'm going to move this to better reflect the high poly. So with the low poly selected, I'll go into vertex mode, marquee select with a left click, and just drag a box around it, and I'll just pull this in some. And it's fine that it cuts through this because it'll bake fine. These are kind of out, so I'll marquee select these, scale tool with R, pull them in just a little bit. Same here. Now you could do this way, or you could fix it in Photoshop. You could bake it the way it was before and then go into Photoshop and paint your normals in, but that's a little bit more than what we're trying to do here. I figured this would be the easier way for you. We just want these at the end. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I'm going to make this look as good as I can. And then especially this part, I noticed. Grab that vert, this vert, pull them in, and here. I think I may have said last time that this was fine to me, but looking back at it, it's not fine to me. That'll be encompassed in there, and that should bake fine. And probably pull these in some, we'll check in perspective view, just to be sure. Oh, and by the way, if you ever want to zoom into something really quick, like let's say I want to quickly look at this, just marquee select that, tap F on your keyboard, and it'll frame it right there. And then if you want to jump back to over here, just marquee select, tap F. And yeah, these need to be squeezed in some. Alright, so I'm going to hide my high poly. We'll open up my UV editor, which is here. Try to keep it there. You can only see my main screen, so I'm trying to just keep it where you can see. Okay, radial menu with right click, object mode. Gonna marquee select all that, and these are our UVs now. They are not good. So with these 3 pieces selected, 1, 2, 3, marquee select, go to at the top, UV, camera based. And now we've got a UV for each of these pieces. But if you unwrap them now with shift with your mouse in this window, shift right click to radial menu, unfold. So you'll be here with shift and right mouse button held down. Go to unfold, then unfold again, and it'll do this weird shape. That's because it's not split anywhere, and we want to split so that it'll unfold nicely. If you remember, we made pieces of this hard, like a hard edge. So to check that, we can hold down shift, right click to radial menu, soften hardened edge, and then toggle soft edge display. And now I gotta really zoom in because it might be compressed in the video for you. But you'll see that dotted lines are soft edges and solid lines are hard edges. we want to split the UVs along all the hard edges. So for this, we've got this weird circle thing here. That's just because it's this whole piece, but remember there's a hole on this end. This end is split open, and that's what we've got along the edge. So it's kind of like looking down the center right now. But if we're going to take all the hard edges, double click along this, it should select that whole edge loop. Double click here with shift held down, then come down to the end. It probably didn't select these, so with shift held down again, click, click, and then with your mouse in the UV editor window, hold down shift, right click radial menu, unfold, unfold, release the click. Oh, I should have cut, I'm sorry. Shift, right click, cut. And now you can go to, just hold down right click, UV shell, left mouse button, drag out a box to select both, and now shift, right click, radial menu, unfold, unfold. And now we have two sides of our blade. So shift, right click to orient. When you open up the radial menu, go down to orient shells. Left click, you can left click each one separately. It's just like in here, but you're just selecting these. So you'll notice that when we oriented, one went up, one went down. That's fine. We want to go to E for rotate, hold down J on the keyboard, and then left click, hold, and you can rotate to snap. So we'll snap that up. And then tap W to get rid of the rotate tool, back into move. Left click, drag a box. We'll just move them here for now. And the blade is unwrapped. So let's go to this. You'll notice these creases are still here. I'm going to get rid of that crease display because we don't even need it. We want to see what's hard and what's soft, remember? So with your mouse over it, shift, right click. Where is crease tool? Crease tool should be the fourth one down. You'll notice your mouse turns into a little triangle instead of this selector thing. Just with the left click, drag out a box around it. All the edges should be selected. Hold down your middle mouse button and pull to the left. This will uncrease everything. If you were to pull to the right, you'll see everything gets creased. Go to the left, uncrease. Tap Q, right mouse button, object mode, click it once, and then we're going to do shift, right click, soften harden edges, toggle soft edge display. And we've already got all of our edges hardened here. So we'll go into edge select mode, hold down shift, double click that, there and there. And we actually want to make this one hard. So that's fine. We'll just select this one and that one and these two. And same deal here at the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. And shift, right click, soften harden edges, harden edge. So the ones that were already hardened will still be hardened, and now we'll also harden the ones that I missed the first time. So now take your mouse into UV editor, shift, right click radial menu, cut. Then shift, or not shift, just right click, UV shell, marquee select with left click, drag, and then shift, right click, unfold, unfold. And there's our 4 pieces. Then shift, right click, orient shells, and then we just want to move the Sorry, my microphone turned off again, but now I have music playing, which you shouldn't hear, but my headset should be fine. So this is a little bit tricky in the sense that it's going to look nice, E, J, rotate. It's going to look nicer in the UVs if everything's kind of this way. It'll pack better, it will have more textile resolution, but it really depends on if you have any details, like if you imagine, I don't know, grinded metal, how maybe there might be lines going this way horizontally along it. You want the UVs to be laid out in the same direction where if that line is going this way, it's going to be consistent along all of them. Or if you want lines going this way and then that way, you just have to think ahead. But for our purposes here, these are actually going to be just fine. We can leave these here. I'll show you how to lay out things in like one button so you won't have to worry about it in just a minute. So we'll click here. Because it was in shell mode, UV shell, and I clicked on this, it's now selecting the shell. We'll just hover over here, right click, object mode, click off, click back on. And do we have hard edges? Let's get rid of this crease here. So shift, right click, crease tool. Notice our mouse is now in crease tool. Just marquee select this whole thing. Hold down middle mouse button, go left, hit Q to drop the tool, right click, object mode. Click one more time just to make it go into object mode. And then shift, right click, soften harden edge, toggle soft edge display. And we don't have any hard edges along this, which is fine. We don't really need it. We'll just split along the middle here. And maybe even, should we split there? Nah, it'll be fine. So we'll go to edge mode, double click here. That'll select all the way to here except where this is triangulated. So then we'll have to hold down shift click, make sure we're getting the bottom part, shift click, shift double click, and we should have our perfect selection right down the middle. So then with our mouse in UV editor, shift, right click, cut, and then right click, hold, UV shell, select them both, shift, right click, hold to radial menu, unfold, unfold. Go into UV shell selection, select them both, just give it a shift, right click, orient shells. Then we want to make, everything else is going up and down, so let's make this one go up and down. So click that one, hold down, well, first hit E for rotate, hold down J, rotate that, and that's good. So in your perspective view, just click off into nothingness just to deselect whatever you have. And then hold down right click, object mode, grab everything. Kind of, if it doesn't show up the first time, like doesn't see how there's nothing there, just kind of wiggle your middle mouse button to zoom in and out. It should populate in the UV editor. Then we want to right click to radial menu, UV shell, select all of these, and then hold down shift, right click, layout, layout UV. And depending on your settings, I'll show you some settings for this. So shift, right click, layout, layout UV, put drop on the little box here for the options. The options box should come up. So here we're using unfold, which is the new method, which is the good method to use. Packing resolution 256 is fine. The higher you go here, the more intense it's going to try to pack this and make sure it's accurate. Pre-shell rotation off. This means that the way we have our shells rotated, it's not going to change the way we have them. So if we had them at strange angles with this off, it will maintain those strange angles. Typically you want to keep this off, so whatever you have here, it'll maintain. Preserve 3D ratios means it will unfold all of these within 3D space the same size. So it's not going to make the blades super huge and this crossguard super small. It'll calculate how big things are and make everything relative to each other. So texture map size, we're going to be working with 2048. If I know some of you have lesser hardware, so you might want to do 1024. And the reason this matters is, so there's shell padding here, 10, and tile padding 2. We're really just going to focus on shell padding right now. But this is 10 pixels in between each shell. So if we zoom in and we look right here, this is about 10 pixels width in our bitmap that we'll bake. If you were to do 1024, hit apply, this whole map is now 1024, and then this will be 10 pixels at 1024 resolution. So I'm going to do 2048. This should all be good. Apply again. Going to close the options box, and we're done. We're done UVing the low poly. So just to make sure everything is, I'm going to close this now. Just to make sure everything is right here in the middle, I'm going to hit W. Don't forget to save. I haven't saved once yet, other than that autosave. Delete history, of course. So with all these selected, hit W, hit D as in dog, and then we're just making sure everything is at the origin again. So I'm going to hold down X with this little new gizmo shape, so we can move where our origin is. Hold down X, middle mouse button hold just to snap it around, and make sure it goes into the middle. Now the reason it only went this way is because I had this selected. If I had this selected, it would do the same thing up and down. Ideally, we want to click this little box in the middle, then do X, middle mouse button, and then make sure it goes to the origin. Hit W to go back into move, just to get rid of that edit. Alright, now we're ready to export the low poly. Before we do that, let's go over to the outliner. If your outliner isn't here, you can go to Windows, Outliner, and it should populate here, or it might pop up in another window off to the side. You should just find it, like it might do this, kind of. Just grab it and dock it right there. So with sword low and the outliner selected, let's open it. Hold down Shift, click the plus. Let's just make sure this is sword underscore low, crossguard underscore low, hilt underscore low, blade underscore low. And this is going to be important when we bake. So all this is good. Select the parent, go to export. I've got a quick button up here, but let's do file, export selection. And I've already got one saved here, but this is actually in the wrong spot. So this is for you guys. So sword underscore low. The settings should be fine. Like these settings, just saving smoothing group should be fine. Sometimes you want to triangulate when you bake, but depending on where you're putting the model or where it's going to be present, this might not be the best option. But this should be fine for our purposes. Export selection. Then I'm going to export the high poly. So hide the low. You hide by selecting something in the outliner. Tap H, it'll come back. Tap H again, it'll go away. So select sword high, tap H, should come back. And everything is in the middle still, that's great. So right here we've got sword high, blade high, crossguard high, hilt high. Make sure these are all the same capitalization as in sword low, and they're all spelled the same. So select the parent, sword high, export with edit, not edit, file, export selection. We're going to call this sword high, so I'll just click this once just to get the name populated down there, and then edit this to be sword high. And now, for baking, we want to make a cage. So we're going to hide the high, bring back the low, H. So a cage is, I'll just show you first. So just grab the sword high, hit Control D to duplicate. Now we'll have a sword underscore low 1. Select sword low, the one before, tap H just to hide it, and this will be our cage model. So with sword low 1 selected, we're going to just rename this to sword cage. And same with these suffixes here, we're going to change all the suffixes to cage. Underscore cage, and I'm just going to copy that. Paste, paste. So all this is underscore cage. So what a cage does is within the shape of the cage, it will cast rays looking for a high poly and a low poly. It will take the shape of the high poly and it'll cast that ray cast data into the UVs of the low poly. And that will give us our normals, our AO, curvature, everything you can possibly bake. But the thing is, we want this to be bigger than the high and the low so that it encompasses everything within it. And there's a really easy way to do that. So with nothing selected, we'll just marquee select, left click, drag. With your mouse over any of these pieces, right click, go to vertex mode. Oh, yep, wait, that's not going to work because they're all separate pieces. So we'll just do this one by one. Right click, vertex mode, select all of these. And then with your scale tool, actually with your move tool, you can just double click or tap W, we're already there. Your tool settings should pop up, but if your tool settings doesn't pop up, you can double click here. See, for example, I'll close this. Just double click here, it should pop back up. We want to, with axis orientation, we want to click this little drop down, and we want to go to normal. So now, when we move these vertices, they'll pull out in the normal direction, as opposed to just scaling from one point. So each one of these vertices are going to pull outwards based on their own orientation. And this is the perfect way to make a cage. It won't be distorted. you'll get the same distance from all points. So with our gizmo here, you see we've got U, V, and N. U and V are UVs, the UV coordinates, and then N is normal. So we're going to pull on this little N. Let's pull it out just a bit. And to even make this better, let's drop that and just click off into nothingness. Click the high poly, which is here, H. And you see how we can see the high poly through this, through the cage? We can't see any high poly through this cage. That's because we pulled it out. And that's what you want. You don't want to see any high poly data inside of this. So we'll click the cage. That's the high poly. We can click again, see if we can get the cage. Yep, okay, we got the cage. So with the cage selected and onto nothingness, because we don't want to accidentally select the high poly, we'll just go to vertex mode. Then we'll left click, select all the vertices there, hit F to frame it, find the N, pull the N out just a little bit. All right, all the high poly is gone, good. Click this one. We've grabbed the cage, good. Vertex, this might work, maybe we'll grab the high poly, we'll see. All right, cool, we grabbed the vertices. So marquee select, find the N, pull them out. Good deal. We'll right click object mode, click off into nothingness just to clear our selection. And this is, you gotta listen here because you might get upset. Make sure with axis orientation, you go back to object. Because if you're stuck in normal and you're trying to move stuff, like let's go back to normal here, you'll see there's no gizmo. You can't move it. It won't even show you where you can move it. That's because we're still in normal. So make sure you go back to object. Now you can move stuff. That's super frustrating if you forget about that. So we'll hide the high poly because they're still in there, remember. And sword cage, everything there looks good. Select the parent of the cage. This should have inherited the same gizmo point in the center, so if we select each one, this should all be good. Yep. Back to sword cage. And we'll export this file, export selection. We're going to call this sword underscore cage. All right, so we've got our cage, our low poly, and our high poly. And also, because we duplicated our low poly with UVs, the cage should have UVs. This isn't super important because it'll bake regardless, but it's there. All right, in the next video, we will bake and texture.